Hi, welcome everybody. Today on Pivot on Purpose, we're going to talk about unlocking possibilities and pivoting in midlife. And I'm going to be interviewing is Michele Folan, who is the host of the podcast Asking for a Friend. And I am Ann Pillsbury. I am a leadership and transition coach, and I help women pivot to careers and lives of greater fulfillment, impact, and ease with my one-on-one coaching program, the Meant for More method. So let me quickly introduce Michele, and then we'll dive in. So Michele's born and raised in Cincinnati. She's a 26-year veteran of the health industry, sales leader, coach, mom, wife, and self-proclaimed lifelong learner, which is so important in midlife, right, Michele?
Yes.
And her current career is the director of inside sales for a company based in California. And as I mentioned, the host of Asking for a Friend podcast. Welcome. How are you?
Thank you, Ann. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, we're so happy I am so happy to have you. So tell us a little bit about your pivot story. I feel like a lot of us might resonate a bit about the timing of everything for you.
Yeah. And, really COVID, did a number on a lot of us, but some of us actually took that time to really kind of reevaluate where we were in life. I lost my job. It was eliminated due to an acquisition restructuring 6 weeks before everything shut down. And, you know, nothing prepares you to be in your late 50s and to do a full-on job search during a global pandemic.
Right,
And
right.
once I don't want to say the panic wore off. It was not so much panic because I prepared financially for that. It was just the idea of not working. I still needed to work, but just having some time to kind of reanalyze what would make me happy, where I would best fit. And I will tell you, in the first few months, I think I focused a little bit too much on the position, the title, and the salary rather than what would be the best fit. And also during this time, Anne, I was really trying to focus on my health and wellness, and I started walking. And while I was walking, I started listening to podcasts.
Interesting.
Right. So I had never listened to podcasts before, and because I never had time because I was traveling
Right.
so much.
Yes, yeah.
And I came upon a podcast that I just really connected with the host. And she talked a lot about people who have had failures or missteps in life and how they've come out on the other side of things. And I was just really intrigued. And I thought, maybe I could do a podcast. And then that fear factor,
Right,
kicks in.
right. You have like the vision, and then you're like, oh no. But then it's out of the, but it's out. The rabbit's out of the hat, though, right? It's there.
Yeah.
Thinking quality.
And
right?
then if you tell someone or you
Yeah.
tell a couple people, then you've thrown that ball up over the fence and you can't go get it. Right.
Yes.
And so it still was there, and I was still formulating what I wanted this to look like and all of that. And then probably about 11 months in, I did find a job with a really great company, and that's where I am right now. Feel really fortunate. I'm working for a boss who hears me, sees me. I've got a really great team. So that was all great. But I knew
that was probably intentional, right? When you reevaluated, those were probably values you knew you wanted in your next role. So you got a twofer, right? You did better in your next role, and you kind of started this idea for what your side gig might be.
Exactly. And I knew I wanted to start the podcast, and I did, interview or talk to a lot of women who were, very successful in their fields. And the one thing they all kept saying was, just get started. It does not have to be perfect. And this goes for anything in life. If you wait till it's perfect, you will never do it.
Yeah, but that's hard, right? I mean, I think for myself as a recovering perfectionist, it is hard to show up and be vulnerable. It's hard to show up even here each week for me a little bit. I get used to it. I'm building competency and then I'm building my confidence as the more I do it. But I'm never going to feel confident right when I start because you can't feel confident doing something you've never done before.
And that is true. And and I did actually, that podcast I was telling you about, I did speak to her
Oh, you did?
about the podcast, and she really helped me out quite a bit. And I have another friend that does a podcast, and she gave me some tips. But basically, and just the technology piece, you've figured this out. I mean, you're doing a live. I've not done that yet, but our kids have to be really proud of us that we figured out the technology piece at least.
Every time I do a reel, I'm not sure if it's like horrifying to my kids or if they're clapping.
Yeah. And who cares? Right.
Yeah, who cares? Because in the end, it's not about them; it's about me now.
Well, that's true. But the other thing is that's the beauty of being in midlife, right?
Yes,
We don't really have to care so much about what other people think. We're doing this for us.
right.
And that's, one of the tenets of my podcast is, put yourself first. And
Mhm.
it's okay at this point in our life to do that.
So, kind of building on that. So, you knew you wanted to do this podcast. What was the topic? What is your topic? What is your podcast about? And what have you learned that you want to feature on the podcast itself?
Well, I have 26 years in the health and wellness space, and
Mhm.
I've always had a lot of interest in medical technology and health. And my dad was a doctor, so I kind of had that for, my whole life. So
Mhm.
we do focus a lot on health and wellness, but one thing that I have found that so many of my guests have such cool stories
Mm.
about their own path and journey to adulthood and into midlife that I've started really sharing a lot of those stories. So I ask people to kind of back up. Like, how did
Mhm.
you get to where you are today? And many of them wrote books, started a business, or like started coaching because of the pandemic. And it's really funny. There are just a lot of those stories out there.
Yeah, I mean, that's my story too. After a year after into the pandemic and being at my corporate job, it was just became untenable. Even though it wasn't, I mean, I had a decent job, I had a great boss, but it was just that I knew that I was meant to do this. I knew that I was meant to help women navigate midlife. And I felt I was just wasting away doing project management, which I'm not passionate or that good at. So it was an internal come to come to myself, I guess. And it kind of provoked me to be able to take that jump, like take that
Yeah.
leap.
Yeah. And I think it's just having that confidence to do that. And I interviewed you for my show. We haven't launched that show yet,
Yeah.
but part of the idea behind asking for a friend is that I support other women's businesses, and I want you to talk about what you can do for other women. And I think that's really important. And women, I think intrinsically are really good at community and just showing other women, hey, let me support you. Can I help you? I saw it when I wanted to start the podcast. I had so many women that were willing to just sit and talk with me for a little bit. Some of them became guests on the podcast, so that was kind of fun.
Yeah, I mean, I have found that too. I think that women, we really want to support each other and cheer each other along. I've found as I have expanded, the more networking, the more community I build, the further I go and the more inspired I am each day. And I think that we're all a little bit out of practice after COVID. Sometimes I hear women say, I feel a little lonely and a little isolated. So I think we would both advise people to just get out there and start reaching out because it's I mean, I really haven't had a terribly negative, I've never been terribly shut down. Sometimes people are really busy, right? So it might
Yeah.
take a few times. And then sometimes you just have to say, oh, they're busy, and that's okay. But in general, people are so generous with their time and their stories.
And they have been. And I've shared with you that I've reached out to a couple people that I've seen maybe on Instagram that I thought they had an interesting story. And some of these folks have huge Instagram followings. They don't really need me to
Right. Right.
to
Yeah.
boost their Instagram or their social media image. But they've been so nice to say, yeah, sure, I'll be on your show. And I'm like, really?
I know.
Great.
I had somebody
You know,
reach out to me the other day. I was like, "Oh, yeah." But I think that, they all started where you started 2 years ago too. And that's why you got that advice from every single woman you talk to is like, you just got to get started and then the momentum will build as you go.
yeah. And, and it's the other thing is helping some other people who are also thinking about launching a podcast. Look, I did the crawling through the mud to figure this out. I'm
Yeah.
happy to share anything that I've learned, good, bad, or indifferent, about starting a podcast. And I couldn't jump right in right away because I was just starting my new job. And when I did tell my boss that I was starting a podcast, it was he was really good about it because I promised him that I wasn't going to do this stuff during work time. But what was interesting was when I told him, it was really about having a creative pivot. And
Yeah.
I don't know if I shared this with you, but I did a lot of theater and singing.
Oh,
In
no, I didn't know that about you.
I did that in my younger years, and I
Uh-huh.
think there's always been this little piece missing that I like that performance. I think sales sometimes is a little like that. There's a little bit of
Yes, it's yeah.
performing.
Yeah, good communication skills, right?
I think so, but
Yeah.
on my bucket list is to do some theater before I get too old, and maybe this is just one of those things that's kind of filling that little void for me too.
Mhm. And so did you do anything specific? Like, did you do so you were in COVID, you were thinking about this. Were there any did you listen to a podcast? Was there anything else that you did to help you connect to that inner wisdom and get out of your fear thinking head that really helped you get grounded in what you wanted next?
Yeah, part of that was putting up a business plan together. I mean, even
Mhm.
though um, I'm not making any money, I keep telling you this is just my expensive hobby. But it was putting a business plan together of what I needed to do. Like the steps, right? I wasn't even sure what those steps were, but just putting something in place on paper that I could, cross off. The other thing was coming up with topics, and I think that really helped me kind of put into place, things that were interesting to me. I figured that's kind of where the asking for a friend comes in, is
Mhm.
that, you know, I'm asking questions of these experts, things that I'm curious about and what I think other women may want to know. And so I think that was kind of the plan, but then you think you have theme music, you have to have artwork because
Yeah, I mean, I
you
don't
know
even know all and then you have a producer, right? You send it off to somebody who
oh
produces it
yeah,
for you and puts it together and
oh,
everything.
having an editor, I could not do that on my own. Now, could I figure it out? Yes, but you talk about crawling through mud. That would
Yeah.
be a little, yeah, I don't know,
Sometimes you
man.
have to know, I think in midlife we can learn a lot of things, and so I don't think we should sell ourselves short, and then we also have to know when it's the right time to outsource
Yes,
something.
yeah.
Yes,
And my sister is a graphic designer, so she helped me
perfect.
with the artwork, and so all that stuff kind of, you can find everything on Google as well. I mean, I
Right,
am
Google is your friend.
I'm a super user of
Yes.
Google. And plus it goes back to that whole thing about being a lifelong learner. I love
Mhm.
I love looking things up.
Yeah,
I'm the dorky person that will be watching like the Antiques Roadshow, and they'll be talking about an artist and I'll look up.
I do that too.
I-
Or watching a movie and, like, I have to look it all up and see, or the historical significance, or is this true or whatever. Well, and
yeah.
that fits right in with your curiosity. I mean, so it sounds like you're deeply curious, and that what makes you a great podcast host too, right? You remain in a place of curiosity with your host, with your,
Well,
guests.
that, and I have a gift for gab, and I
Yeah.
I do genuinely want to pull out people's stories, but I'll tell you, sometimes it's so organic. You'll
Hmm.
be speaking with someone on you know, it's kind of like Zoom,
Yeah.
and you just click and it just goes. And I can I can have questions already prepared prior, and we don't even need them because we
Yeah.
just, it just works.
Well, and that's a gift of yours that you're able to make people
Wow.
feel comfortable
Well, thank you.
and so that they just come forth. I think a lot of
It's
times we don't
yeah.
recognize our own gifts, right? Like that is some people wouldn't be able to do that as easily as you do. So that's really
I
celebrating that.
appreciate that. I work hard at that. I mean, I think that's we all need to make sure that the person we're in front of, whether it's an interview like this or it's our children or our husband, so that they know that they are the priority and they're being heard, and they're the only person in the room that counts at that
Hmm.
moment, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so important. So what kept you, I mean, as you started a new job and life started to open back up, what kept you committed to doing the podcast? I think a lot of people might have abandoned it.
You know, I, well, certainly it was challenging because I
Hmm.
have this career
Yeah.
that pays my bills, and
Mhm.
I think it was just the fact that I told enough people that kept me committed to it, and I really wanted to do it, Anne. I mean, it I felt that passionate about it, and even when I would say to somebody, "Yeah, I'm going to do a podcast," even when I would get the "You're what?" They're like, "Yes, I am doing a podcast,"
And don't tell me I'm not because I'm doing it.
right? That only
Yeah.
gave me more fuel to do it.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing, because I can't say that when I was in my 20s, 30s, and even 40s that I had the whats
Hmm.
to do it.
What shifted for you, do you think?
I think there was a lot of stuff. I think going through the fire a bit
Hmm.
with a couple of old bosses
Hmm.
who toughened me up a little bit.
Hmm.
I think that had something to do with it. I think just general life experience,
Hmm.
having children.
Hmm.
Um, I have a second marriage.
Hmm.
There's just a lot of stuff that I think kind of just gave me a little more confidence that life will throw bumps in the road, but the you can get over them.
Hmm.
That's not your whole story. That's just a
Yeah.
chapter,
That's just a chapter. Yeah. Yeah.
and I think also, I talk about, being true to yourself, um, and not being afraid of change, because I believe that maybe staying stuck because you fear change could be like the worst thing of all, right?
Right.
And we can't be afraid to dip our toe in the water and try new things, even in our 50s and 60s, because it's never too late. It's
Right, and
never
it's
too late
never
to do
too
it.
late, and it's never too late, and it also becomes a bit more urgent. I mean, not that, but you are at the second half. So how are you going to make that impactful? And what are the gifts you're supposed to bring to this world? I just think that I guess that's what I'm so passionate about in midlife. I think all these things come together that really free us and empower us to step into who we are meant to be and the impact we're meant to have in this world. And it's not till we're past the children and past in menopause or through menopause and tired of the people pleasing and stop giving a blank about what everybody thinks, that we really can step into ourselves and do what we're meant to do on this planet.
And taking care of ourselves,
In the process.
because we are living longer than
Hmm.
we ever have. and we've got to take better care of ourselves than our mothers did.
Yes. Yes.
And
Yes.
because we want to be around for those grandbabies and beyond.
Yeah. Exactly. And so you have 2 grown children?
I have 2 grown children, and my husband Michael has 4 grown children.
Oh, wow. So
Yes.
what do all your kids think of you becoming a podcast host?
Well, my daughters, so my daughters are very engaged with it.
Mhm.
Um, the stepkids know about it. They will sometimes ask about it, but I have to be very frank with you. I don't talk about it a ton. I
Oh,
try
really?
not to. I don't want to suck all the air out of the room, oh,
Mhm.
my podcast, so unless people ask me about it, I don't typically bring it up. you know.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but I think, um, again, I don't know how many of them even listen to podcasts, right? And
Mhm,
and that's kind
mhm,
of the challenge for our age group, because
mhm.
a lot of midlife women, because I had a friend, she's like, "Oh, I haven't watched your podcast yet." I'm like, "Well,
You
you,
listen.
you don't watch podcasts, but it's okay."
It's okay.
Yeah,
You figure that out.
yeah, it doesn't hurt my feelings if a friend like listened to one and she's like, "Yeah, I'm out." Um, I'm okay with that. But the good news is we're in the top 5% of podcasts globally,
Wow, that's
which
incredible.
which is a huge milestone for a podcast
Yes.
that just launched in
Congratulations.
May. And there's 3 million podcasts out there. So,
I know, it's so competitive. That's
yeah, it
incredible.
is. But, you just got to find your niche.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and I just one final thing, and then we should probably bounce off, but, I also think when we shift in midlife, and this goes back to the community, our friends or our people we hang with might change a little bit too as we take on new exciting things. Our older our friends may not embrace them, and that's okay. That you could have friends with lots of different places, but it's also kind of fun to open yourself to making up these new relationships, as you said, as we take on these new projects in the second half of life.
Oh, and I have met some wonderful people like you.
Yes.
And feel so fortunate that I get to meet women from around the country and start these friendships, and because we do have a lot in common, and we can be supportive of each other.
Yeah. So awesome. So is there any final parting words of advice you'd like to give our audience here?
Just that it's okay to put yourself first once in a
Mm,
while, and never stop growing as a person.
yeah.
Never
Yeah.
stop learning, and not just about people around you, but never stop learning about yourself.
Yes. So important because that's our number one relationship and it changes over time and we never get there. I think we have this I guess that's another thing that age has taught me. Like you don't ever get there, right? It's a constant exploration. There's always something new to learn about yourself and your relationships and
Oh,
everything.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
For sure.
There's no there.
That's a topic for another show.
I know. Yeah, you're right. You're right. So you guys can find Michelle asking for a friend. She's on Instagram and Facebook at that handle, asking for a friend. And then I just also wanted to share with anybody who is considering pivoting on purpose. I have a great resource called 10 Clues for Clarity on Your Pivot on Purpose. You can find it at my website, which is Anne with an E, PillsburyLikeTheDoughboy.com. It's right there. And you will also see a replay of this interview if you didn't catch the whole thing on my website. You'll find it. There's a tab that says Pivot on Purpose. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Michelle. This has been a great conversation.
Thank you, Anne. I really appreciate you having me today.